Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs and another edition of Favourite Albums of All Time. Today we're going to be talking about the wonderful Brain Salad Surgery by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Look at that cover. Now, I was originally going to include this in my anniversary album show for December because this was originally released in the UK on the 7th of December 1973, but then I found out that it was actually released in the US on the 19th of November 1973. So if I'd wanted to include it, I really should have included it in this month's show in November. But I didn't want to not talk about this album because this album is one of my favourite albums of all time, but also it's such an important album to me. I think I've told this story before, but I'll go into it in a little more detail. This was not just the first Emerson, Lake and Palmer album I ever heard. And look at that, the wonderful die-cut sleeve and everything. And this isn't just the first Emerson, Lake and Palmer album I heard. This is the first progressive rock album I ever heard. And it all happened in 1985. I was 14 years old and I was in the Scouts, the Boy Scouts. We were going to, a few of us, including myself, were going to the Jamboree that year, and our troop was raising money to send us to the Jamboree. And one of the things we were doing was having a big communal garage sale or yard sale, depending on what terminology you use. And all the parents were donating things to sell at this yard sale. And we were storing it because we had, where I lived with my parents, we had a big downstairs double garage with lots and lots of room. My dad had a big workshop in there and everything. And so we were storing all these donations. And one of the parents donated a big box of records. So one night I grabbed this box of records and took it upstairs, took it next to my mother's stereo, put on the headphones and started pulling records out at random and just listening to them. And when I saw this cover, I just knew I had to listen to this. I had no idea what it was, but that cover just said, "Listen to me." So I picked it up, put it on the record player and listened to the whole thing from beginning to end. And it blew my little 14-year-old mind. This music, I was 14, it was 1985. I'd grown up with synth pop, with new wave, and that was sort of the music I loved as a kid. And I still love that music to this day. But this opened up a whole new avenue of music for me. I mean, that same night, I also listened to We're Only In It For The Money by Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. I listened to Starless and Bible Black by King Crimson. I listened to The Story of I by Patrick Moraz. It was a real eye-opener that night. But this album, more than anything, was the one. This was the first one I pulled out and listened to. And it was the one that really made me want to explore more about this music. This is the best Emerson, Lake and Palmer album. I think that's inarguable. I mean, other people might pick Tarkus or might pick Trilogy, and those are good choices too. But to me, this is the peak. This is the pinnacle. Maybe I'm a little bit sentimental in that respect because it was my entry point into not just Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but the whole progressive rock genre. But to me, this is all killer, no filler. It starts off with their incredible version of Jerusalem, which you know, I didn't know that song at all as a 14-year-old. Now I realise it's an old hymn. It's a song that's very much related to, you know, is sort of held in high regard in England in particular. Often when there's like Commonwealth Games or that sort of thing, instead of using God Save the Queen or God Save the King as it would be now, England use Jerusalem as their anthem when they get a gold medal. You know, it's a very, very English song. It's about the idea that Jesus visited England. The treatment that Emerson, Lake and Palmer give it is just wonderful. The Hammond organ, the synthesizers, the synth bass. Like Greg Lake I don't think plays bass on this song. It's all synth bass. The incredible drumming of Carl Palmer and the wonderful vocals of Greg Lake. It's a great introduction to the band, and it's under 3 minutes long, so it's a really good way to just sort of give somebody a taste of what this band is like. Then you get Toccata, which is their incredible reworking of part of a piano concerto by Albert Ginastera, who is a Argentinian composer, 20th century composer. And what they do with that piece of music is just incredible. The arrangements, again, the synths and the Hammond organ, you've got the drumming of Carl Palmer, you've got some wonderful bass playing on this one from Greg Lake. It's instrumental because it is, as I say, based on a piano concerto. You get this incredible percussion section in the middle with electronic percussion, which is like 1973. I didn't know electronic percussion existed way back then, but it was something that was specially made for Carl Palmer to do these little triggers when he hit his drums, to make all these sort of wonderful synth noises and, you know, sort of whoops and bleats, and yeah, just incredible. Then you get the beautiful Still You Turn Me On, one of Greg Lake's greatest ballads. Absolutely love that song. You know, they would do beautiful solo acoustic versions of it live on the Welcome Back My Friends triple live album that came out after this. It's a gorgeous song. Then after that you get the wonderful, absolutely delightful Benny the Bouncer. Just great, humorous song. You know, I didn't know this at the time because, as I said, this is my first Emerson, Lake and Palmer album, but this was kind of a tradition for them to do songs like this. You know, there was Jeremy Bender on Tarkus. There was The Sheriff on Trilogy. You know, these sort of humorous, light-hearted songs, often with sort of honky-tonk piano in them. Yeah, I know a lot of people give Benny the Bouncer a bit of crap. I love it. I think it's great. And then for the rest of the album, the rest of side 1 and all of side 2, you get the absolutely mammoth Carnival 9. It starts off with Carnival 9 First Impression Part 1. Just this great sort of sci-fi lyric about the future and that sort of thing. Wonderful music from Keith Emerson. Incredible vocals from Greg Lake. Just beautiful playing by all three of them throughout. You know, you get some great guitar from Greg Lake. You know, Greg Lake's always thought of as the bass player, but he played some mean guitar on these Emerson, Lake and Palmer albums as well. And not just acoustic guitar. He absolutely rips on the electric guitar on this song. And it sort of comes to this little end at the end of side 1 that it fades out, and then it fades back in at the beginning of side 2 for First Impression Part 2, which is the bit that probably most people would know because that's the one that starts with Welcome Back My Friends to the Show That Never Ends. You got this sort of futuristic carnival barker talking about all these, you know, things that are supposedly miraculous or wonderful in the future. You know, there behind the glass there's a real blade of grass. Be careful as you pass. It's great. Absolutely love it. Comes to a great conclusion, a great crescendo at the end. Then you get the wonderful instrumental Second Impression, where Keith Emerson just absolutely lets rip on acoustic piano. I have come to adore Keith Emerson's acoustic piano playing. I mean, as much as he's sort of associated with Hammond organ and synthesizers, especially a big sort of modular Moog synthesizer, to me, I just adore it when Keith Emerson plays piano. And he plays absolutely gorgeous piano on this. And then in the middle, he starts playing a synth solo, which sounds almost like steel drums. Absolutely brilliant sound. And again, like nobody else was doing in 1973. Absolutely wonderful. And then goes back to the piano part. I love this piece of music. Absolutely gorgeous. And then you get the third impression, the conclusion of the piece, which is almost like this interplanetary war that ends up being a war between humanity and computers. Just wonderful sci-fi lyric. The lyric is co-written by Peter Sinfield, who also co-wrote the lyric for Benny the Bouncer. Just a wonderful piece of music, wonderful lyric. It's a great story. Yeah, it's a great way to conclude the album. And again, they do an incendiary live version of the whole Carnival 9 suite on the Welcome Back My Friends Triple Live album. Absolutely wonderful. So there you have it. Brain Salad Surgery by Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Also notable that that is the very first use of the famous ELP logo. The artwork was done by H.R. Giger. Wonderful artwork. It's what drew me to the album in the first place. Please let me know in the comments what you think of this album. If you've never listened to this album, please go to your listening app of choice and give it a listen. I thoroughly recommend it. Great album. If you are familiar with this album, please let me know in the comments what you think, which are your favourite tracks on the album. For me, I probably can't go past the whole of Carnival 9. Absolutely love it. But every track on this album to me is absolutely brilliant, completely different from one another. And that's what I love about this album too, the great variety. Please do like, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to look at some of my other favourite albums of all time, there's a playlist for those. Also, I have a playlist for albums that I think don't get recognised enough, which is my In Defense Of series. There's a playlist for those. You can go and have a look at that. I have a In Defense Of Emerson, Lake and Palmer's infamous Love Beach, in fact. If you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, I also have a playlist for that. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram and Twitter, and I now have a dedicated bicyclelegs Facebook page. Please come and give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.